Welcome to episode 52 of Fresh Thinking by Snowden Optiro. My name is Ian Glacken and I'm an executive consultant here at Snowden Optiro. Today I'm joined by two guests. Firstly, we have Dr. Oscar Rondon, who is the principal geostatistician with Snowden Optiro. Oscar is a very experienced PhD qualified mathematician and geostatistician who is part of the Supervisor team and who also provides sought after training advice in the field of geostats. We're also joined by Anthony Cook. Anthony is the product manager for Supervisor and a senior consultant for geology and geostats, also doing training. Anthony has both a practical and a technical background in geology and geostats and is currently completing his master's in data science. Today we're going to talk about the validation of mineral resource models. Why do we need to do this? What types of validation are available? And what tools do we have? So welcome, Oscar and Anthony.
Thank you for having me.
Firstly, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question, but Anthony, why do we need to validate our mineral resource block models?
Well, unlike most sciences, or at least many of them, geostats and geology is not an exact science. We're mostly dealing with unknowns, and because of that, it's important for us to have checks in place all the way from data collection all the way through to validation of the estimate itself. So we use model validation techniques to compare the outputs that we have to the inputs being the drill hole data and other deposit knowledge. By demonstrating strong relationships with the inputs and the outputs, we can build the confidence that we have in the estimates that we make. However, it's worth noting that even with high confidence, these estimates aren't technically correct or they're not 100% accurate, which is why we continually update these estimates as we collect more data and get greater information from our general processes that we undertake.
Okay, I think we've pretty well established that model validation is one of the key stages in the estimation workflow, and I'm hoping that's not news to anybody. So Anthony, what are the key approaches in this area?
Well, there's a few methods that we like to see. It definitely varies depending on the deposit, but essentially most of the comparisons we do are back to the drill holes. So those robust procedures are going to give us the greatest confidence across the deposit. And so aside from the volume variance effect that we do see with that point data, there should be a strong relationship with the estimate and the data itself. So we expect to see a mix of basic and advanced techniques. For instance, stats comparison between the declustered data and the estimate itself, spatial comparisons, including visual validation and trend plots. We also like to check that the directions that we have in our variography aligns with the estimates and the grade trends that we visually see in the estimate itself. And depending on the context, we might have techniques like leave one out cross-validation. The other one that we like to see is the use of the discrete Gaussian Change of Support, which allows us to compare the grade tonnage curves of the estimate itself to some theoretical grade tonnage curves that correspond with it. So as I mentioned, the exact mix does need to be determined by the resource geo, and it does depend on the complexity of the deposit and the estimation technique that gets used.
Thanks, Anthony. I think from my point of view as a geologist, I would say that the fundamental issue is that the model matches the data, however you interpret that. Oscar, Anthony mentioned the discrete Gaussian approach. Please, as a geostatistician, could you briefly take us through the theory of what we're looking at in this approach?
Yeah, sure, Ian. I don't want to go into all the theoretical detail of the technique, so I don't want to bother our listeners, but the idea is, as I usually say, is like two steps, right? So first we use something really special that we call Hermite polynomials, and we fit the input data distribution. Then we need to use a special property that is called Cartier's relationship. And with this relation, we establish what is the distribution at block support. And is that distribution the one that we use to compute the grade tonnage curve? Yeah, so the theoretical details behind the discrete Gaussian are complex, but that's in a good summary of the technique.
Thanks, Oscar. And as we mentioned in the introduction, the two of you are the main men for Supervisor. Anthony, what tools do we have directly in Supervisor for model validation?
Well, Supervisor does cover all the methods that we've mentioned so far. So we have a model validation suite, and that encompasses most of the basic tools that we need. So It's a fairly simple method of creating trend plots in all of the directions that you might want to analyze. It produces bivariate plots, comparisons between the statistics. It also allows you to add in the changes that come from declustering and top cuts so that you can see the influence of those changes as they are in steps of the estimation process itself. So by doing that, we can get grade tonnage curves from the actual block model, and we can also bring in some of the advanced techniques I mentioned, like the predictive curves from the change of support process. And that allows you to compare the actual outcomes to what you expect to see from the K&A parameters that you put in.
Thanks, Anthony. So, Oscar, you gave quite a complex explanation of the Gaussian change of support. So, actually, how easy is it to implement in Supervisor?
Yeah, look, Ian, the discrete Gaussian method has been implemented in Supervisor for some years now. It is available in the model validation component, as Anthony mentioned, but recently, probably 3 or 4 years ago, we put the discrete Gaussian as a standalone component. So that way, the Supervisor users can use the discrete Gaussian without having a block model, which is required for the model validation component.
Thanks for that. So, gentlemen, I know you're in charge of the development of Supervisor, so perhaps you could give us some teasers as to what you're planning in future versions of Supervisor that help us with validating our models.
So I guess depending on when you're listening to this podcast, we may have implemented some of them already, but there's definitely a lot that we see that we want to improve and add to, particularly the model validation suite, as well as a few advanced techniques that are peripheral to that tool. Essentially, to sum it up to some of the overarching themes that we get asked about a lot and that we're really looking forward to implementing, flexibility of data comparisons is a really big one. So being able to compare different data types, and removing some of the restrictions there. Obviously, improving the visuals of charts, making them report ready, looking at implementing better summaries for the suites. We know that there's many different complex deposits that have different requirements. So being able to bring those in, again, being report ready. And finally, a really big one for us is being able to handle larger file sizes. So we see that now and into the future, we're tackling larger, more complex deposits. We have techniques that can allow us to gather more data and create more data. And so a big one for us is really keeping up with this data explosion in the geology space and ensuring that the processes that we provide can handle them and will be robust going forward into the future.
Thanks, Anthony. So, Oscar, a little bit of crystal ball gazing. Do you think there are any tools that to be developed which don't already exist? And I'm thinking here specifically about AI or simulation.
Yeah. Look, Ian, the tools that we use for model validation has been around for a long time, as you know. So I expect to see something different. I don't know when it's coming, but we should be able to see something different. It's similar to AI and machine learning. AI and machine learning have their place, and I'm pretty sure we should expect to see something coming. With simulation, it may. But I usually say that with simulation, we have to be really careful. It's a lot of work. And we need to understand that estimation and simulation have two different targets. So in estimation, we have a smooth estimate. In simulation, we have a lot more variability. But I would say something is coming.
Thanks, Oscar. That draws this very interesting discussion to a close. So Anthony and Oscar, thank you very much for participating.
Thank you, Ian.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or to Fresh Thinking by Snowden Optiro in various places. You will find it on the website, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and also all of the good platforms. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you join us on our next podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.